converge and ultimately dump all the contents of anything excess into this junction right here. It's the junction of the jugular and the subclavian on either side. The vessel merges, the lymphatic vessel merges with it, and anything that was in this lymphatic vessel merges and becomes part of plasma. It's just part of it again, and this whole thing is continuous. So you've got your blood going on. Oh, let me do my dance. Blood here, wait, this way, then out to the body, then this way, out to the body. At the same time, you've got lymph just merging it back. Lymph just merging it back. So it's like anything that gets sort of out of where it's supposed to be, the lymphatic system will return it. And so it has two functions. It functions to return any excess fluid back to the cardiovascular system. But in the process, it's like, well, if we're going to return this fluid back to the cardiovascular system, why don't we just scan it? Since we also have, that ability, the lymphocytes are here. Scan it in case there's some crap there that we need to, fight. Infections, bacteria, pathogens, toxins. In the process, it gets scanned for any kind of pathogens, and the immune process will start if there is something there that shouldn't be there. So it's a dual purpose. The lymphatic system keeps your fluid balance correct so that nothing leaks out. Imagine if a bunch of stuff leaks out into your dermis, in your tissue, in your ankles, your fingers. They just get swelled and swelled and swelled. It's not in the capillary, it's in the tissue, it's in that dermis. Well, there's a lymphatic vessel that's there. That's like, all right, I'll take up that fluid. I'm really permeable. I'll take it up, return it to the cardiovascular system, and then eventually you urinate out any kind of liquid waste if there's excess water in your body overall. And in the process, scanning it for any kind of disease that might be there. So two processes. So your immune system, while it sounds like your lymphatic system is also your immune system is not solely in your lymphatic system. Your immune system is very broad. Neutrophils are part of your immune system, and that's very much your cardiovascular system. Macrophages, they are dendritic cells that wander around your dermis. Those are part of your integumentary system. So your immune system is very broad. It covers a few systems, but the lymphatic definitely has immune capabilities. And those would be located in the lymph nodes, right? So remember these structures that we're going to look at that are along this way, along this pathway. So the components of the lymphatic system really are these vessels, from the capillary to a vessel, to a trunk, to a duct, in terms of from distal all the way to proximal, which ultimately leads to the heart. The stuff that's in there is called lymph. It's very similar to plasma, because that's what would leak out were there to be anything that leaks out. Like all the components of plasma, mostly water. Probably plasma proteins don't leak out. They're too large to leak out, but there may be a rogue plasma protein here or there that leaks out. Certainly all those nutrients could leak out, electrolytes, hormones, anything that possibly could that's in the plasma. Those can leak out. And so that is what we call lymph. So it's very similar to plasma overall. The cells that are present are the lymphocytes. So that's where they really congregate. Yes, there are lymphocytes in your blood. They migrate into your blood. But the lymphatic system is predominantly lymphocytes and lymph. Yeah, Chris?
The fluid connective tissue, that would be called lymph?
Lymph, exactly. So if you recall the connective tissues that we had when we did tissue, we've got connective tissue proper, connective tissue supporting, so that would be bone and cartilage. And then liquid connective tissue is blood and lymph. So the whole category is called lymph. The cellular part are the lymphocytes. And then that background stuff is lymph, which is very similar to plasma, as it would be, because that's what would leak out, plasma, into the connective tissue. And then all of these lead to ultimately the heart. So the vessels along the way, you have these structures called lymph nodes. And so they're basically little headquarters that a vessel will lead to. A headquarters for lymphocytes. They're all hanging out there. It's like a bunch of them. So that any lymph that comes through, it gets scanned. And the lymphocytes have that ability to scan it and look for it. If it's a toxin, a B cell might bind to it and make a bunch of antibodies. If it's a virus, a T cell will notice it if it's infected a cell and start the immune response. And that's why there are many of them. So if it doesn't get scanned in the first lymph node, there's going to be plenty along the way, all the way back up to where it would dump all that contents back into the blood. So those are lymph nodes. So these tissues here, think about this. So not only do you have your blood, where you could have, so your skin. You've got your skin, you could have stuff, pathogens that pass from your outside of your skin into your dermis. Well, that's getting pretty close to the inside of your body. And so the lymphatic system is, the capillaries are there in your distal parts of your body to take up any pathogen that may have entered into your dermis. You also have these other possible entry points for pathogens. Respiratory pathway, the digestive pathway, urogenital pathways. Any entry point into the body is going to have it's a weak point. It's going to have an entry for some kind of pathogen. And so along all of these pathways, you've basically got these cell populations of lymphocytes. So all along your respiratory pathway, that's what your tonsils are. Your tonsils are just a bunch of lymphocytes all along your pharynx, so that when you're breathing in anything, respiratory pathogens, airborne pathogens, the lymphocytes are right along that layer, right along that pathway, so that if it penetrates into you, the lymphocytes are there. And we call those MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. It's not like a full-on organ, but it's just a bunch of lymphocytes that collect, kind of hang out, getting ready for any kind of pathogen.
So MALT would be specialized connective tissue dominated by lymphocytes?
Yeah. Specialized connective tissue. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So your tonsils are MALT along your digestive tract. So imagine you're eating, you eat like a big, a rotten piece of chicken that's got salmonella in it, right? That's a bacteria, dangerous, not good. So you've eaten that, it's in your stomach, but they survived the stomach. They can't, they didn't get obliterated by the acids, and now they're in your small intestine. Imagine they're still in your small intestine, just proliferating away, potentially making you sick. Well, along your small intestine, where it's still not, that stuff is still not in your body yet, that's what the small intestine is, it's still a pathway. Imagine one rogue little salmonella gets into your tissue below that epithelial layer. Well, that's where we have all along there these lymphoid populations, and we call again MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue.
What about Peyer's patch?
Yeah, that's what that's one of them. So that's in your ileum.
Is that a MALT?
That's a MALT.
Oh, okay.
Yep. MALT is the general term, and then we've got GALT, BALT. Don't worry yourself too much.
Okay.
But yeah, it's Peyer's patches in your ileum, the very, very last part of your small intestine. Yeah, so stuff can get, the immune response can be generated.
So for carry lymph nodes would be the answer for carry lymph? Or carry
Lymph vessels.
lymph vessels?
Yeah, lymphatic vessels or lymph vessels. Your spleen is an organ that is very much like a lymph node, except lymph vessels don't lead to it, it's your blood. So all of your blood leads to your spleen, and in your spleen, there are lymphocytes that will kind of survey the blood. So lymph gets surveyed by lymph nodes. All of your blood goes to your spleen, and the spleen has lymphocytes in it that survey the blood. Okay, we'll look at the spleen at the end. So that's an organ. Of course, the two primary organs are your bone marrow, because that's where they're born. Lymphocytes are born there. T cells migrate to the thymus where they mature. B cells stay in the bone marrow where they mature mature, what they're doing is, early in development, lymphocytes, or B cells, are presented, this is kind of what happens, they're presented a cell, or they're B cells, they're presented a pathogen. And what some kind of protein. What they do is get tested. If it's a U cell, so you have markers on your cells that say it's U. They present a U cell to a B cell. They're like, all right, what you gonna do? B cell, what do you got? And if the B cell binds to it, they're like, that's a U cell. You can't do that. That's autoimmune. You're gonna destroy this person. So they just kick that B cell out, and that B cell doesn't get to stay in this person. So that's part of this maturation, differentiation process. Then they give it a non-U cell, a real pathogen, a real thing that your body should fight. And if the B cell binds to it, they're like, you may go on to become a B cell in this person. So it's kind of this maturation process where they want the B cell and T cell is the same thing. Don't bind to self, don't attack self, attack non-self. And so that's this maturation process. And it happens in the thymus for the T cells. Chris?
So bone marrow would be organs surrounded by fibrous connective tissue. That would be bone marrow. Consider that organs surrounded by fibrous connective tissue capsules.
No, that's a lymph node.
Lymph node.
Lymph node. Yeah, lymph nodes.
Professor, an antigen is like a toxin?
What?
An antigen is like a toxin?
Okay, so we don't have time to do blood type, unfortunately, this semester. But an antigen, her question is, what's an antigen? An antigen, so say this is an E. coli cell. Ooh, mean, bad E. coli. That's a bad E. coli cell. E. coli, all cells have markers on them, just in general. Like, remember those glycoproteins on the plasma membrane? Like, okay, I'm this is a cell marker. The antigen is that thing, the thing on the surface of the cell. If that were to break off of that would still be the antigen. An antigen is not the whole cell, because your B cells, for instance, don't see the whole cell. All they see is that little thing. They're very short-sighted. All they see is the antigen, and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna bind to that. They don't see the whole picture. They're just like, that's bad. And so whether that's attached to a cell or whether it's floating around in the plasma, that's what they would bind to. That's an antigen. An antigen is like a piece of something, protein usually, that could mount an immune response. Now, your red blood cells, so here's a blue red blood cell, I guess it's deoxygenated, right? Have markers on it. So you have maybe that type on yours. That's okay, that's fine. So that's an antigen. Early in development, your body learned not to bind to that antigen. So that's an antigen also. But if we put this type of blood in someone who doesn't have this kind of blood, their body would see that antigen and mount an immune response. So the word antigen isn't always bad. It just means a thing on a cell or a thing floating around that the immune system could respond to. But if it's a you thing, your body's not going to respond to it. So it's not always a bad thing, antigen.
One more question. So an antibody is like kind of like a neutralizer?
Yeah, we're going to talk about antibodies when we do B cells. But yeah, antibodies are proteins that are generated after they see an antigen. A B cell will make antibodies.
So B cells bind to antigen first, and if it's not autoimmune, then B cells can't mature in bone marrow.
B cells mature in the bone marrow. That's where they learn
So if it's
self.
not autoimmune, or if it's not autoimmune cells,
There's no such thing as an autoimmune cell.
if it's not attacking the cells in your body, not the body.
Ideally, we don't attack ourselves. I mean, in a healthy individual, we don't attack self. If we do, there's something wrong. It happens, certainly. We know autoimmune disorders occur. But ideally, we don't. And they learn this so those cells learn not to attack self early in life. That's the whole point of this maturation process. Don't attack self, because antigen is an antigen. You know, but that antigen was presented, if it's a U antigen, early in development, so that your lymphocytes and B cells, your B cells and T cells don't mount a response to it. But it could in diseased individuals, or lupus, I think, is autoimmune, rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune, MS, they say, has autoimmune, I think, origins. Or no, it is autoimmune. You're attacking the myelin sheath of you. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about B cells and T cells. Okay, so that's the overview. Your lymphatic system is vessels that contain lymph that ultimately dump that stuff into your heart that becomes part of your cardiovascular system. There are lymphocytes that are in there. Along the way, there are these structures called lymph nodes. And then at the same time, all of your blood is getting scanned in your spleen. So it's kind of a weird system, I get it, it's strange. All right? So, yeah, Yanni.
Lymphocytes are the cells suspended in lymph.
Yes,
Yeah.
the lymphocytes, exactly. So the major components are all these vessels. So from the capillary bed to the vessels, along the way are nodes. So those rounded regions are called nodes. They're just, regions. They're actually real organs. They're like nice little capsule, and there's like this great little seed that's actually happening inside. All of them lead to like this common one singular duct. So you've got this thoracic duct. So the lumbar ones lead to this, convergence. The intestinal one that leads all to this main duct here on the left side of the body. All of these converge to the right side of the body, and everything ultimately dumps into right here and here, that junction of the jugular and the subclavian vein.
Would that be considered the flow of lymph?
Flow of lymph. We're going to do that on the next slide, and we'll go from most distal at the capillary bed all the way back to the heart. Yeah, you'll see that. Of course, the spleen is over here, like right underneath your rib cage. It's lots and lots of blood in the spleen. Your thymus, we don't see it here, but the thymus is like, where's your trachea? It's like actually in front of your heart. It's kind of in front of your heart, like the veins that are leading out of your, wait, why is the trachea so low? I guess it's right there. All right, so let's look at these structures. So let me draw this. And here's our flow. Oh, we have green. Yay. So we've got this main thoroughfare down the middle. We've got this rounded region here. Here. Let's see if I can draw it. Not very well. We've got jugular, subclavian, bronchomediastinal. Okay, so what happens is, so this is all like your leg, this is all your right leg, this is all like digestive system, so it's all like this, intestinal. This is all your arm. No, this is all like respiratory right here. This is all left side respiratory. This is all arm. This is all arm, and this is all head, and this is all head. So what happens is, there's a bunch of capillaries on the left side. They all converge to the single place where it joins, and that's called the lumbar trunk. So right here, all of your leg converges to the lumbar trunk. And trunks are the single point where they all converge and join to this main duct down the middle. And there are 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 of them are paired. The only one that's not paired is this intestinal one. So here's that intestinal one. I didn't draw it that great, huh? Intestinal one. So the lumbar trunk is the convergence of all of your legs. So the left lumbar trunk and the right lumbar trunk. All of them converge to a single entry point, to this single major thoroughfare. So here's lumbar, left, lumbar, right. I didn't have to do it there. This one is intestinal. It's not paired. And the name kind of indicates, so intestinal is taking lymph associated with your digestive tract back to this main thoroughfare. Then you've got bronchomediastinal. For this one and this one. So this takes lymph from, your heart area, so your lungs, your heart, anything inside the thoracic cavity.
And that's all considered the flow of lymph, right?
Flow of lymph, yeah. Then you've got subclavian arm. So that's your arm, right? Your upper limb. So your upper right limb all converges and joins. Let's see if we can see it. All right in here. And then you've got jugular and jugular. They're all paired. And when I say paired, I mean it's the single entry point here and here where they join, where they join this major trunk, this major duct. All right? And now, Chris, I think this will answer your question. The flow is this way. So the flow goes from lymphatic capillary to a lymph node to lymphatic capillaries, lymph nodes, collecting lymph vessels, the trunks, so all of those lead to a single trunk, and then the trunks lead to the ducts. And then there's only two lymphatic ducts, and those dump into the cardiovascular system, and that's why it's on this side, because it's the venous system, the blue part, that then all goes to the superior vena cava and then back into the heart. That's the flow. So capillary, vessel, node, the trunks, then the duct, and then the heart. Make sense? Very boring, I agree. It's like, what?
You said capillaries, nodes,
Yeah, let's
trunks,
write it out.
ducts, and heart?
Yeah. Capillaries, vessels, nodes, trunks, and then ducts. So you've got, say this is your lumbar, your left leg. All these capillaries, of course, right? They're very windy and small. And then you've got a few vessels that all lead. This is your left leg. And then this is the trunk. And along the way you've got nodes. Here. There's your trunk. Then it leads to this main duct that then goes into the heart. So that's the flow. So we're coming from your left leg, your big toe. Something got taken up by the lymphatic system in your big toe. We go from the capillary to the vessels, to the node, to the trunk, to the duct, and then into the heart. That's the flow. All right, let's get off that topic. Woo. So here we have a close-up of a capillary bed. So here's the capillary bed, right? This blue and red and purple part. Oxygen-rich blood is coming down from the aorta. Say this is down into your toe. Oxygen-rich blood. At the tissue site, at the place where it's actually going to get diffused, O2 is going to diffuse out, maybe go into that cell, maybe go to that fibrocyte. So that fibrocyte can make some more collagen or something. Comes out of here into this tissue. Waste that's generated by these cells goes into the capillary, the blue one, and then goes back to the heart. CO2, urea, nitrogenous creatinine, anything like that. That goes back to the heart, and that's what your blood does. It circulates that. Okay, so that's circulating. Well, in the process, what if it doesn't make it back into the cardiovascular system? What if water goes out? Oh, it doesn't make it back in, get back pumped into the blood. Okay, well, there's this alternative route, and that's what the green is here. And so it can take up, see how it's blind-ended? It's not a loop, and take it up. Okay, good. But now we're not collecting just stuff out in this dermis, out in this connective tissue. It's back up in a vessel, at least a vessel that's going to lead back to the heart. And then we can make sure our blood volume is correct, our tissue volume is correct, okay? So that's what it looks like. So these capillaries kind of wind around, the lymphatic capillaries kind of wind around the vessels that are there.
Are they actually that color or they're dyed?
They're not green, no. They're definitely not green. They're always shown green in all of your textbooks. Yeah, we'll see them as green from now on. But yeah, they're not green. And in fact, they're very hard to see on a dissected human specimen too, a cadaver. They're very hard to find. They're not easy to spot. We won't see them in the cat. They just disintegrate. They're very, very permeable. And I'll show you that on the next slide. So they're very permeable, and I'll show you.
It's a neon color. Really?
So here's just the lymphatic capillary right here.
That one is clear, I think.
This is a blood capillary in cross section. So imagine it's like three-dimensional. Here's a cross section here. It's another one here. Maybe it's like that, right? Capillary. Well, this vessel is kind of hanging out near it. And look how permeable this capillary is. It's got holes in it, like slits. It's not a complete wall of epithelial cells. It's actually kind of got spaces. So stuff can go right into the capillary, into this lymphatic capillary. So certainly water, pathogens could go through here, electrolytes, ions, can all go into here if it stays and gets sort of collecting in this interstitial space. A red blood cell, very unlikely that that would happen. That's too big. They don't generally just come out of the capillary. This capillary is not going to permit that. But it gets taken up into this capillary, this lymphatic capillary. Of course, that's more of the vessel, so that's going to lead to, this whole process right here. Okay? So they're very permeable. That's the point of the lymphatic system. It's more permeable than you would think. So that in the process now, anything that gets taken up into this lymphatic capillary gets scanned for pathogens along the way.
Is it just pressure that keeps it from flowing back out?
Yeah, pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, pressure. So yeah, there's the correct pressure on both sides of this membrane, the differential. And the differential causes, yes, a one-direction flow, definitely, yeah. The same is true to have oxygen diffusing out. There's a pressure differential that favors O2 going out and CO2 going in. Yeah.
I've heard that the only thing that propels the lymph is like breathing or movement. Is that
Correct.
true?
Yeah. So we didn't get to do blood vessels. We don't have time, but as a comment to what Vivian was saying, your arteries deliver blood. Can you just hold on one sec, Chris? I'll come to you in a second. Your arteries are delivering blood from your heart out to your tissue, right? So they have a lot of force. There's a lot of force and pressure on your arterial side because you've got your ventricular contraction. It's got to have a lot of ventricular pressure to push the blood out. There's also a lot of muscle, smooth muscle around the arteries. But when it gets way down to the tissue site, the pressure is really, really low. So actually the pressure is very low here. It's just right for diffusion to occur, but as far as overall pressure, it's very low. To return blood back to the heart in the veins, there's a system that is not smooth muscle, and there is no ventricular contraction powering blood back to your heart. And so the way we get blood back to our heart, especially, imagine, against gravity, is actually the contraction of your skeletal muscles associated with each of those veins. So you've got a vein going right in between your gastrocnemius, your path. The only way the blood in this vessel will go back up towards your inferior vena cava is through the contractions of your calf muscle. It pinches these little valves, and these valves open and close as blood gets moved back to the heart. It's a different way and for blood to return. The same is true with lymphatic vessels. They also are associated with muscles, and they have valves in them too that sort of go like, if we contract the muscle, the valve at one side will close and the valve at the top will open, so that now the fluid goes to the next sort of compartment until it comes all the way back to where it needs to go. So to summarize, veins and lymphatic capillaries or lymphatic vessels are very similar because they're a very low pressure overall. Arteries have a lot of pressure in them. It's pumping blood from your heart out, so this is generating a lot of pressure. So yeah, contraction of skeletal muscle is the only way lymph returns. So someone who doesn't have the use of their limbs has a difficult time getting blood venous return as well as lymph return. Both of those systems are affected. So massaging is often something they do, having a therapist move their limbs just so that they can get lymph and blood, deoxygenated blood back to the heart. So it definitely affects those systems. I wish we did blood vessels, just that part. Taking a step aside, now a little bit to the side. This is a picture of your small intestine. In your small intestine, we've got stuff you're eating, right? Stuff you've just broken down from a hamburger down to very small amino acids, so that the smaller the molecule, the better, and then we can actually absorb it into our body. So absorption is the point of your small intestine. We're going to finally absorb everything we've just eaten, hopefully. Well, in fact, what happens is, and this is a close-up, one of these is called a villus in your small intestine. So food comes charging through with this great surface area, right? All these cells are getting ready to absorb. Well, what happens is everything we eat gets absorbed into this blue one and goes to the liver first, except for lipids. Lipids get absorbed in this green lymphatic capillary. And that green lymphatic capillary, no, it's not really green, is called a lacteal. So our lipids that we digest, they don't go with proteins and sugars and nucleic acids the first time around. Their first entry point into the body of absorption is via the lymphatic system. So you absorb lipids the first time from your digestive tract into your body in something called a lacteal, which is really just a lymphatic capillary, a blind-ended lymphatic capillary that goes up inside one of these villuses. So you've got, hamburger. Okay, well, the cheese part goes in the lacteal via the lymphatic system. The other part, the meat and the bun, go into your blue one. That's a pretty easy way to understand it. Go into your capillary cardiovascular system. Everything gets routed to the liver first, and then joins cardiovascular system. But this then follows the same old route. So that would be from your intestinal trunk, intestinal trunk, leads to here, and goes to the heart. So all of our lipids are digested in the lymphatic system first. And then they actually get dumped right into the right atrium, just like all blood that's coming from this part of your body goes into the right atrium. Lymph, so that lymph also has kind of a milky color, a milky look to it because of that. It's a fatty, kind of milky look to it. And that fatty, milky component we call chyle. Chyle, sounds like a person's name, C-H-Y-L-E. So know what a lacteal is. Please just know it's a specialized, or it's not even that specialized, but it's a lymphatic capillary specialized for lipid absorption. Alright? So, we go through our lymphatic capillary here. We're in our lymphatic vessel. Oop, we're coming upon a lymph node. Okay? So these are lymphatic capillaries. Look here. It's all these right here. They're leading to a lymph node. There's a little valve, just like veins have. Veins have those same valves where the movement of skeletal muscle allows those valves to kind of pinch open and pinch close, and pinch open and pinch close, which allows lymph to keep flowing. Now, everything comes to this thing called the lymph node. I want you to see that there's a lot more entry points than exit points. So lymph comes on in this structure and then comes out right here. Well, it kind of slows down. It's a bottleneck-ish kind of situation, right? There's more coming in than coming out. So what happens is the lymph kind of sieves across this three-dimensional, meshy, netty kind of structure. And that's what a lymph node is. So this is all that reticular connective tissue. Remember that way back, that pretty cherry blossom tissue that we looked at? It's three-dimensional, so it's got reticular fibers and these partitions so that everything kind of just gets sieved through here and ultimately gets squished out a smaller exit point. So it slows down and gets scanned. So lymph, if there's a pathogen in here, an antigen or a bacterial cell or a cell that's virally infected, either way, these cells, these purple cells, those are lymphocytes, those cute little cells that have a big nucleus that fills up nearly the whole cell. That's what these are. And so that fluid, that lymph gets scanned. And if something's there that shouldn't be, an immune response is begun. If not, the stuff just goes on its merry way, continues on to the next one. Okay, well you missed it the last node. We'll get it this time around. And so these structures are positioned all along this pathway to scan anything that needs to be, to scan the lymph. And that's good. So I like that you can kind of visualize how it would come charging in and then go, whoa, slow down, sieve, scan, squish out, and kind of have time even to scan that lymph, just based on the structure, how it enters the broad side and exits the less broad side. And that's where the lymph node is. So when we're doing yoga, wait, what's that move where you, that move? And they always say, you're cleansing your lymph nodes. You kind of are, because you're squishing them. You're letting all that fluid kind of squish around in the lymph node and get scanned by lymphocytes, and then, of course, move back towards, keep coming out. Chris?
So an afferent vessel would just be one entering, and an efferent would be one exiting?
Exactly. Yeah, that. Let's think E, exit. A, there's a Spanish word. I know there is. A, not, what's the entry in Spanish? What is it? Entrada, that's E, huh? So it's confusing. Okay, so exit. Efferent is exiting. Afferent, they're all entering. So yeah, so your lymph nodes are important. Fluid goes through them, and it's like this three-dimensional meshy structure where everything kind of goes, your lymphocytes are just looking for anything that could be there and mounting an immune response.
Did you say afferent is exiting?
No,
Afferent is entering?
coming in. Yeah.
what's the functional point of nodes being the way where they are?
Well, they're right along those trunks. Sorry, those trunks. So let's see. You've got. Yeah, all these. Well, there's more than. The other side has them. Where is it? There it is. So yeah, so your axillary are coming from your subclavian, so they all kind of converge. Is that what you mean? Like why they're sort of grouped together?
I guess why are they where they are?
Oh, well they're everywhere. They're positioned close to where the trunks are. So your left lumbar has a set of inguinal ones right along here. I mean, I guess it's more functional. You wouldn't want them all out here necessarily. It's like, it's gonna hit a node. Let's put the nodes kind of closer to where we can just have fewer versus having lots and lots of them. So yeah, where they converge. A bunch of them converge and then more converge. So yeah, your armpits, neck of course would be all jugular, from the jugular trunks, right? It's hard to remember, trunks and necks. This is a really big one, cisternic-hyli. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know, lots of times actually, I don't know. But yeah, if you were to have a cancer cell metastasizing in a lymph node, they stage that as a stage maybe 2, I think, right? So think back to what we learned about cancer. A cancer cell is a cell that has the message not to stop dividing, right? Genetically, it got the message to just keep dividing. I know, let's just keep dividing. Let's just keep dividing. Let's just keep dividing. Which is all fine and good if it's going to stay in one place and just be a tumor that's just in one place. That happens. Those are benign tumors. I got a big one on my shoulder. It's just adipocytes bound inside this weird little hardened capsule, and they don't migrate. They don't leave. But that's not the case for most cells that have that message to keep dividing. If one breaks off, enters into the lymphatic system, well, hell knows where we're going to go after that. It's a free-for-all at that point. It's going to be in the lymphatic system. Oh, and then the cardiovascular system, and then maybe the lymphatic system again. And then what if it gets lodged in a lymph node? Okay, now it's lodged in there, has the message to divide, because it didn't stop having that message to divide. That's a genetic mutation. So now it's causing a tumor in your lymph node. That means it's metastasized, is the point. It has. So these doctors will stage the cancer based on, is it in associated lymph nodes? If it is, then we know it's moved. It's originally somewhere else, and now it's, are we okay? Yeah? Is that the same person? It was a different person? I just came in here. A different person. Okay. So yeah, if it's in a lymph node, for sure it's metastasized. Then they look for other signs if it hasn't metastasized even more. But if it's in a lymph node, that cell that's cancerous is definitely moved from location A to location B. It's on the way to moving. I got it? So that's what a lymph node is. They're pretty cool, right? They're valuable little structures. Now let's talk about the 2 types of cells that are present. B cells and T cells. So let's ignore these for now. And for all of eternity, let's ignore them. But let's talk about the 2 types of lymphocytes, because they do their thing differently. And that's pretty fun to understand. So lymphocytes are B cells, which mature in the bone marrow, and that's why they're called B cells. And T cells, after they're born in the bone marrow, migrate to this thing called the thymus, where they get mature. And when I mean by they get mature, they get ready to face you without fighting you, but fighting something else. That's the whole point. They become immunocompetent and sensitive to self, so that they do not attack you. And then they go on their merry way into being bona fide lymphocytes. So they do things differently. T cells, hopefully I can act this out really well. It's how they see the world. B cells and T cells. T cells don't see an antigen. They can't see it. It's like their vision just doesn't see this little thing, this little piece, this little thing floating around in the plasma, or even on a bacterial cell. They wouldn't see the thing that a B cell is going to see. They don't even see a bacterial cell necessarily. What a T cell sees is a U cell that's infected with a virus or infected with the antigen. And it's a U cell that takes that thing in, and it's like an SOS flag. Help me, I've been infected. And then the T cell's like, oh my God, I can see you, like that. I'm gonna go get you and attack it, or what's the word? Not phagocytize, because they don't necessarily phagocytize. They inject these enzymes that then allow that cell to die. But it's not gonna see it if it's just like this piece floating around. It has to be a cell, a U cell, that's taken in this thing, this bad thing, and they present it. It's called presenting the antigen. So your cells will do this. It's like they take it in, and then they go like this, and they're like, oh my God, I can't self-destruct on my own. I don't have the ability to kill myself. But this thing is in me, and there's probably other cells around here that have it in me. So somebody help me. And then the T cell can see that. And so we call that a cytotoxic T cell. Cytotoxic T cells can see a cell that's presenting its antigen on the surface of the cell. And what they do is they bind to it, inject these enzymes, and basically perforate the cell, and the cell undergoes apoptosis, which means cell death. That's how a T cell works. T cells can be cytotoxic T cells or helper T cells. A cytotoxic T cell does this. A helper T cell, what a helper T cell does is helps B cells do their thing, but they don't actually do any attacking. They see this, and then they tell other T cells to come over. They send out chemicals that are like, okay, we've got a problem here. Come over here, come over here, come over here, cytotoxic T cell. Come over here, cytotoxic T cell. So they help. My point of telling you this is because HIV is a virus that infects helper T cells, not cytotoxic T cells. It has an affinity for the helper T cell. Once a virus is in a cell, well, this is what will happen. So even if your helper T cell is infected with HIV, it'll do that. It'll be like, oh my God, I have a virus in me. But if the virus is proliferating in a cell that's also part of your immune response, ultimately it's a losing game, because these are cells that are supposed to fight this virus. And that's why HIV is so virulent. If it were in a epithelial cell, okay, fine, helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells, and everybody can come to the rescue and just obliterate a bunch of epithelial cells, no big deal. But if in the process you're obliterating your helper cells, which are those supposed to help what's going on in you, ultimately it's a losing game. The good news is that now a lot of drugs are great, and people live great, long, healthy lives with the antiretroviral drugs. So individuals with HIV now are they live same lifespan as everyone else because of the drugs that we're able to administer to them. In fact, I was doing research about this recently because I was under a rock as far as HIV went for a while. I just kind of forgot about it in terms of, I was born in the 80s, so I was born in the 70s. That was such a lie. My daughter was born in the 80s. She tells everyone that. But no, and you live through the 80s, it's this deadly disease, and it was in the 90s and the early 2000s, and now people can live very healthy lives with the cocktail that can prevent the process of the virus replicating within the cell. So a virus has to get inside you and inside the cell to go back from DNA, from RNA to, so go from RNA to DNA. It needs you to help them do that. And that's what we give antiretrovirals for. And even individuals who are HIV positive, having partners that are HIV negative, if that person who's HIV positive is on all the right drugs and their viral load is undetectable, their partners, it's very rare for a partner to catch it. I'm not saying, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not recommending anybody take my information personally, but I did do the research, and the transmission rate is so low, even when that person who's the partner, who's not HIV positive, is not on their own set of antiviral medication, it's a very low transmission rate. Add on to someone who is the partner and they're on their own set of medication, it's virtually zero. So it's pretty amazing where we've come from. HIV being this terribly fast and rapid disease to, people having healthy lives, healthy sex lives with partners that are not HIV positive. So pretty great, pretty amazing. Now we just need a cure, and then we're good.
Have you heard about PrEP or PEP?
Yeah, the PrEP, right?
Yeah.
So that's for
medication
partners,
that will,
right?
Yeah, keep you HIV negative.
Yeah.
Like it's antiretroviral medication that's designed for people who are negative, who want to remain negative.
Who want to remain negative.
Just a daily regimen.
Yeah, exactly. So now, even individuals, so individuals who aren't in a partnership with someone they know is, but they could be, but in a partnership or have a instance where they could be exposed to it, take this set of medication, and it's a very, very, very low transmission rate. Of course, they have to say it's possible, but it's so low that, especially if the individual is undetectable. Like if your partner is undetectable, pretty rare. It's a pretty rare transmission now. Pretty amazing. Yay, HIV research. B cells do it a whole different way. So remember, T cells, they're hanging out. They don't see it unless it's a U cell or some kind of cell that's like, oh my God, I've been infected. Come get me. Okay, now I can get you, and I'm going to kill you. B cells don't do that. What B cells do, they can see the antigen. That's all they see. They don't see that whole bacteria. They just see that little, they're very narrow-minded. They're very narrow-focused. They just see that thing on the surface. So even if that thing was just disassociated from the cell itself and was just hanging out, they would see that. And what they do is bind to it. I'm taking you a step over here. So let's imagine this is step 3. Let's put a step 2 here. They bind to this thing. They take in that piece. They arrange a little antibody that fits just right for it. They make this perfect little thing called an antibody for the thing they just took in. And then what they do is rapidly differentiate into this cell called a plasma cell, which then just Xerox copies out this antibody, that thing that it made. So it takes in the antigen. It goes, okay, we need to have a solution for this. Okay, and let's just make a bunch of them, like a little Xerox factory, and all of them are exactly the same. And this plasma cell now is circulating, just churning out these antibodies for that very specific antigen. And then all those antibodies bind to it, because it's a perfect little locking key. That's what an antibody is. It binds to that thing, so lots of them bind to it. And then a macrophage, which can eat anything pretty much, just goes home and just phagocytizes it, eats it, degrades it, gets rid of it. So a different way for the immune system to see stuff. So basically these work with bacteria, because bacteria have, not even just bacteria, but any kind of cell that's not supposed to be there. So if you got a blood transfusion from the wrong kind of blood, this is what's going to happen. It's going to see a red blood cell in somebody else that's not the right kind, see a thing on the surface that's not you, and go, take it in that piece, rearrange it, make an antibody, kick out all these antibodies, and now attack that antigen, that thing that's in your body all of a sudden. And then the macrophage will come and eat that. just a different way to fight stuff.
Do macrophages respond to non-cell surface molecules?
And do they
Is that in my notes?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's find out.
It's number D on page 4.
Which page?
50.
Oh, okay, so good. Yeah, thank you. So those are called natural killer cells. Natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are another type of lymphocyte. I deleted it from the lecture because another school, their book doesn't talk a lot about it. But they actually detect cells that have something going wrong on the inside, like a cancer message. So yeah, so that would be like a natural killer cell. They can detect self cells that are cancerous, and also non-self cells that shouldn't be there, and they can just destroy them, phagocytize them immediately. They don't do the B cell way or the T cell way. They're very similar to macrophages. So they're using natural killer cells as cancer therapies, individualized cancer therapies. They're sensitizing your natural killer cells to your cancer cells and then letting them loose on your system to fight and find those cancer cells. They're another kind of lymphocyte, natural killer cells. Okay, last thing. Oh, Anna?
Did you say lymphocytes do not see the antigen unless it is infected by?
Only if it's presented. Yeah, T cells only see a cell that's presenting the antigen.
And that's U cell?
It's a U cell that's
Oh.
presenting the antigen, yeah. So, yeah. In the process, really back it up here, so let's look at this B cell. After this cell kicks out a bunch of antibodies, this plasma cell, it will remain as a memory cell. And the same is true for T cells. Once they've seen something before and attacked it, they then differentiate into a cell that's called a memory cell. So we have memory T cells and memory B cells, so that when they see that thing again, which is very possible, that antigen, that bacteria, that cell, that toxin, that virus, they can rapidly mount a response so quick that it's like you never even had it. And so we use this process in immunizations. That's what we're doing with vaccinations. We're putting in a bacteria, for instance, in you, but we've taken out all the bad stuff. We've gone into a lab and we've said, all right, let's get this Haemophilus influenza, is that a virus? I think it's, no, that's a bacteria. One of them's a bacteria. Whichever one of those is a bacterial flu. They take the bacteria, they mess with it, they take all the bad stuff out, the ability to replicate and all that stuff, and they just dress it up. They're like, all right, here's what your immune system's gonna fight. They give it to you, and then your immune system responds accordingly, the same way. Okay, B cells, I'm gonna bind to that antigen, I'm gonna take it out and make a bunch of antibodies, and I'm gonna make a B cell that's a memory cell, and I'm gonna hang out forever in this person. And the cell has been attenuated, or means weakened, or completely deadened, so that it's actually not virulent, it just looks it. Your immune system thinks it is. And so we use this whole process when we do vaccination. So now your body has memory cells, for X amount of years, and then we get boosters just to remind it, it's like, come on, remember, here it is again, just in case you forgot, your B cells are getting lazy. We give boosters and we remind our system, oh yeah, okay, of course. Let's make these plasma cells with these antibody factories in there. And so this is what we're doing. So in terms of a summary of all this, which I think is the most interesting part of the lymphatic system, certainly immunology and the cells themselves. The B cells stay in the bone marrow where they mature. They enter the lymphatic system at some point, they may probably enter the cardiovascular system and then back again. They keep circulating, doing this thing where they're looking for antigens, making memory cells that also continue to circulate. T cells migrate to the thymus where they do the same kind of cycle of life, making memory cells. There's a good word up here I liked. Naive. So a naive immunocompetent lymphocyte. That's a great big mouthful. But a naive one is one that's just never seen the bad thing yet. It hasn't done it yet. But it's immunocompetent because I've passed the test to be a lymphocyte. I've done everything I need to do. I've graduated. I just haven't gotten my first job yet. So it's naive, but it's immunocompetent. That's exactly how I feel when I graduate yet. Like, I've got my piece of paper, I've got my tie, but I haven't gotten the job yet. I'm totally scared, freaking out here. It's the same kind of thing. So they're naive and immunocompetent. They circulate, they encounter something, they circulate even more, they proliferate, and then they remain as memory cells forever, and then we can fight stuff. Ultimately. That's it. Wow, you kicked butt. Oh wait. Oh no, I forgot. This is what I did yesterday. CCC. I thought we were done. We have a couple more slides. Okay, so this thing is called malt. So not only do we have these vessels, these capillaries, these vessels, these nodes that all dump your lymph into your heart, but we also have, along any entry point where stuff could go wrong and enter into your body, we have mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. In your respiratory system, it's your mouth, your pharynx, you've got your tonsils. That's what those are. They're just a bunch of tissue of lymphocytes. So you've got the lumen of your pharynx. You've got your stratified squamous, I think that's what it is. Stratified squamous epithelial cells, I think, is the beginning part of your pharynx. Well, the next layer in is like kind of like your dermis of your inside of your body. Well, there you've got a bunch of lymphocytes just kind of packing together, like all hanging out. Because anything could get into your respiratory system. In your lungs, of course, you've got similar kind of stuff. It's not a lymph, this is all just dispersed tissue. It's not a lymph node or a vessel. It's not a spleen or it's not an organ. It's just kind of groups of lymphocytes that are hanging out. So you've got GALT in your respiratory system, GALT in your gut, so that's GALT, gut associated. A really important one is called Peyer's patch. Of course, in your genital region, the genital tract, urogenital, reproductive tracts, any entry point along the sides, you've just got lymphocytes that are ready to do this whole thing we just talked about. Okay? Don't worry too much about it. Just know what malt is.
So is that same for male as well?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Urogenital. The male urethra. Yeah, it's an entry point. It's a very long entry point. So it's very rare for males to get the same kind of urinary tract infection that women get, that females get, because it's a longer pathway, but nonetheless, it is a pathway for sure. Vivian, this is the Peyer's patch. So, like I said, in your digestive system, you're eating, food is over here, this is the lumen. This is where your food is, so amino acids and small molecules are going to start getting absorbed into your body. Absorption occurs here. Lipids are going to go to the lymphatic system. But all along this entry point, you've got lymphocytes. Look at that. And it's so pretty. I love this picture. Because they do organize in these lovely little round sort of areas in this connective tissue layer. This is kind of like your epidermis of the digestive system, but it's simple columnar epithelial cells, right? This is kind of the dermis, where you got blood vessels and nerves and stuff going on down here, glands. But along the digestive tract, you've got these lovely patches of lymphocytes. So a very specific one is called Peyer's patch. That's in the ileum, small intestine. I just want you to know the tonsils are those. You don't need to know the names. I don't ever ask. I don't know. Well, okay, forget that. Know them in a list if you saw it on a multiple choice. Okay, you don't need to write them. You don't need to do it a short answer, but if I said the following are tonsils, you know, this one, probably D, all of the above, something like that. All right? You don't need to write it. What?
Just the name.
Just the names, spotting them, not even writing. Just a yes, that's one. Yes, that's one. And yes, that's one. Okay? The thymus is this organ that atrophies as we get older. When we're little, it's quite large relatively to the person, to the size of the individual. And this is where the T cells go to get immunocompetent. They pass the test. So when we're little, we always say, let them go roll around in the dirt. Let them get exposed to stuff. Let them get sick. Let them fight this infection. Let them get used to this stuff. Because their thymuses are just so active, kicking out T cells, kicking out memory cells, fighting infections, and then saving that in a memory cell. So that in the future, you start your childhood healthy with lots of T cells and immunocompetent cells, you can last, a lifetime of health. So the thymus is very active and it atrophies as we get older. It's in a weird spot though. It's like right in front of your vessels as they lead to the heart, close in your mediastinum. It's a weird spot, right? The spleen is also an organ. Instead of it being fed by the lymphatic vessels, it doesn't really have anything to do with the lymphatic capillaries and vessels. That's all, all from here into your cardiovascular system. But all of your blood eventually goes to your spleen, just regular old cardiovascular system stuff. And your spleen does two things. So like I said, your splenic artery brings blood from your aorta, oxygenated blood, out your aorta, down your descending aorta, over to your spleen, and goes into your spleen, and this is all very porous sinusoidal, these are sinusoidal capillaries. They're very, very leaky. And so blood kind of sieves across this area, and it does two things in here. It looks for the red blood cells that are looking not so hot, and they're starting to degrade. And so it breaks down old red blood cells, and that's in the more red pulp. We call it the red pulp, the more red part of the spleen. All right, well, we're going to do two things. We're going to look for old red blood cells and get rid of them, break out the heme, get that over there, send it over to the bone marrow so we can recycle it, redo this whole red blood cell thing. And it also scans the blood for any pathogens. And in the white pulp, it's mostly lymphocytes. It doesn't look like it should be what it is. It's white pulp, but it's mostly lymphocytes, so there's a kind of purple. And does the same thing it would do to lymph to blood. Because heck, you could have an infection in your blood too. You could have something in there that's not supposed to be there. And if it didn't get into the lymphatic system, it's here. So let's look at it. Let's scan it. So the spleen has two functions. Your erythrocyte function, so that's red blood cell disposal, recycling, and then immune stuff. So any kind of blood-borne pathogen that's there. Is that it? Is that it? Yes. Yay. Not the most glamorous system. Digestive is fine. Don't stress it. All the rest is fine, especially reproductive.